The suffering servant passages, you could call them 4 or 5. If you include chapter 41, you have 41, 42, 49, 50, and 52. Those chapters in Isaiah, I'll repeat them: 41, 42, 49, 50, and 52. They're all, in a sense, suffering servant passages. You have this ideal suffering servant who is Jesus. You have Israel, the nation who ought to be functioning as servants to God. And you have the international church of God, true believers from all nations. So those are the chapters which deal with 41, the suffering servant, 41, 42, 49, 50, and 52. We've been reading about the Messiah, as you rightly said, in chapter 41, and now we're into 42. Behold my servant. This is Messiah. This is Jesus. This is you, a servant of God. This is now unconverted Israel, as they will be in the future, ideally. And you get this comforting language. I'm upholding you, my chosen one, my elect one, in whom my soul delights. God has a soul. God is a person in the Bible, not a human person. He's a divine God person. The word nephesh, meaning soul or self, is used of God as much as it's used of Abraham or any other human being. So my soul means myself. God is a single individual self. I, God, will put my spirit on him. God puts his spirit. That's the extension of God, his operational presence and power, not another person. God's spirit is not another person from him. Of course not. His spirit is what comes from his thinking, his speaking, and so on, everything he does. And look at this world government material. He, this chosen one, will bring justice to the nations. Wow, that's the gospel. The gospel is an invitation to you to take part in this enormous world government that's going to prevail when Christ comes back. Now, in verse 2, this verse, I think, Carlos, I'm right in saying that this is quoted in the book of Matthew. This Messiah will not cry out or raise his voice, nor make his voice heard in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break. The idea is that he's not going to have to yell and yell and yell. He won't even bruise a reed by breaking it. Think of a reed, imagery from gardening, right? It's a very frail thing. He's not even going to break it, not exercise violence at that stage. Or a smoldering wick. I'm not into candles, but if you think of a smoldering wick, he's not even going to extinguish that. Nothing violent, nothing dramatic at this stage, but he will faithfully bring forth justice. He will not grow weak or discouraged until he will have established justice on the earth. That's a one world government. So beware of the counterfeit one world government that the devil can be organizing, and look for the really genuine one world government on earth, justice on earth. In his Torah, in the Messiah's Torah, the islands as well as the mainland will put their hope. I think that's absolutely beautiful. This one is fulfilled in Jesus, and you've got it at the top there. Matthew 12, 15 to 21 quotes this very idea. Jesus was not violent at his first coming. He didn't join the army. He didn't go and try to kill the enemies of Israel. Far from it. But wait, there's that famous verse in Luke. What is Jesus going to do when he comes back? Jesus will say, as Messiah, bring my enemies in front of me and slaughter them in my presence. That's a verse which one lady theologian said, well, we know Jesus couldn't have said that. Well, I believe in Scripture. She didn't like that verse at all. Bring my enemies and execute them right here in front of me, Jesus said. That's the part of the gospel you're not hearing much about. As I said to you, this one well-known lady theologian said Jesus couldn't possibly have said that. Well, what if he did? That lady needs to become a believer. We talked about Abraham believed God, and that was reckoned to him as making him right. You are right with God if you believe what God says. That's an enormous encouragement. Very gentle with the weak. But when he comes back, Jesus is not going to remain the gentle, not even putting out a smoldering wick kind of Jesus forever. Vengeance is mine, God said of himself, and he's going to execute that vengeance through his Son. So why doesn't that verse get on your refrigerator occasionally. Well, being meek and mild does not being weak. In fact, Jesus is furious with the religious establishment of his day. He called them in Matthew 23 7 times. He said, "Woe to you, a curse on you," effectively. May you be damned. May you be excluded from the kingdom 7 times. So verbally, he was extraordinarily strong. And so meekness is not weakness. Moses is said to have been the meekest man on the earth. But Moses was able to be very, very forceful too. So we have to rethink our meaning of these words, but you're right to point that out. He's verbally very, very strong. And he has a, what I would call a, quote, dismal approach to life. He says, will I even find the faith existing on the earth when I come back? Now, I think he will. I'm glad to say he will. But he's not hopeful that we human beings are going to get things right. We're mostly not going to get it right. We're going to get it wrong. That's why we need the kingdom. And what we're doing in Isaiah here is a vision of the gospel. We're not reading here some Old Testament extinct prophet. We're talking about the gospel, the invitation to you to prepare to help Jesus fix this benighted world on a scale on which you have not seen anything yet.